Matt from the Beer Massif podcast, also Massive Beers, back after a long hiatus. We put the plug on the podcast pretty much when the pandemic rolled around, strictly because this podcast has been a face-to-face endeavor. Typically, almost 99% of the audio recordings and videos we've shot on here have been sitting across from a table and actually enjoying a beer with the people that we're talking with. And, COVID put a kibosh on that. So I figured put a pin in it. And let's see this pandemic through and then jump back into that face-to-face format. Well, it's been over a year. And that podcast itch needs to be scratched. So we are bringing it back with full force. But we're going to do a little bit of kind of digital online hangs before we delve back into the face-to-face, because we're still knee-deep in that pandemic. So we're going to be doing online hangouts, Zoom calls, those kind of things, and just sitting down with the people that I like to read, drink, think about when it comes to beer. It's not just breweries or brewers, or even at this point, journalists, everybody in between. We're going to cover, brewery owners, beer tubers, Instagrammers, people in social media, stuff like that. There is no kind of boundary when it comes to that stuff. So if somebody has an interesting story to tell, an interesting product that they produce, we'll try and sit down with them, have a conversation, enjoy some beer, albeit digitally, but it can be fun too. We're all used to that nowadays. So first episode up, we have Zach. Yeah, Zach from Marlowe Artisan Ales. Zach Ross, he is a brewer that honestly is one of my kind of favorite breweries going at the moment. Lower ABV, crushable, drinkable ales and lagers. I reached out to a couple of different people when I started to get this podcast back up and running, and he was honestly top of mind. We're going to sit down with him for about an hour or so, talk about beer, talk about what he does up there, brewing out of 12% Beer Project. Enjoy a couple beers along the way. So hopefully you guys enjoy this first inaugural new season of the Beer Massive podcast. Rate and subscribe and all that kind of fun stuff. More importantly, the people that we do kind of showcase on here, visit them. Visit them both physically and digitally. Subscribe to them on Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of fun stuff. And if you are privy to their beers and have the option to drink their beers or watch their content or read what they've written, please do so. Because that's the whole purpose of this, is just to spread good people doing good things in the beer world. So, yeah, without further ado, here we go. Well, Zach Ross from Marlowe Artisan Ales. Cheers. What's going on, guys? Beer Massive podcast, back from a little bit of a hiatus. We're doing the old COVID thing, and last time we were on here, I believe we're talking to Shelton Brothers, which a lot has happened with them since then. But we are not talking them. We're talking a little bit different beer. We're talking with Zach Ross. It's the brewer and owner of Marlowe Ales and the head brewer of 12% Beer Project. Correct?
Yep, that's me.
What's going on, homie?
Just living the dream.
Yeah.
Pouring a beer.
Yeah. I know what you mean. What are you drinking?
Just a little eager to share.
See, I was gonna pull my eager to share out in a little bit. It's one of my favorite beers going right now. One of the reasons I reached out to talk to you, because I think that beer is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
And that's just not me just buttering you up for the sake of making you happy. It's genuinely, yeah. No, man. Like, one of the reasons why I reached out to you and wanted to talk to you is, you seem like you really dig on that low ABV crusher game, and while a lot of people do that, and you do bigger beers, you know what I mean? It seems like that mid fives to mid sixes is kind of an area you like to live in. Is that has to be purposeful? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would even go a little bit lower than that. 3 to 6 is like my preferred comfort zone. It's definitely a challenging place to be as a brewer, because you have to be technically spot on every time you do it. There isn't a whole lot to hide behind, and it's more about nuance and balance when it comes down to it. So I'm challenging myself as a professional. It's also the beers that I want to drink. I don't want to drink one beer and chew on it and have that be a meal. I want something that I can pair with food, because I love food. I love to eat. So I could see if I could make a beer that would be served at like a place like Blue Hill, like that's the dream for me. It's like, this is something that somebody who knows way more about food and beer than me paired these two together because they feel like it complements each other. So that's what I want.
Where's that born from? Is this a natural instinct of you liking low ABV, or is it a matter of brewing for so many years? Because I mean, you were Kent Falls for so long, and you're down south for a bit, and is it just a matter of you've always kind of died on that low ABV hill, or is it something that you kind of work towards just loving?
I think a lot of it stems from my time at Kent Falls. It's something that Barry, the owner there, really kind of harped on. Obviously the higher ABV beers sell a lot better. And so they were willing to take that hit on a lot of their sales just by making drinkable beers. The simple farm life matches very well with that. And that's kind of like, you slow things down a little bit and you're just sitting there enjoying a beer outside of a field or inside a barn with friends, and you're talking and you can sit there for hours. And being there and experiencing that over and over and over again is like, this is what I want. If I'm going to create anything, I want to create this experience, or at least attempt to create a similar experience.
And then like, when you started off, before you even went to Kent Falls, like where did you live in the beer world? Like, as far as like what you drank and whatnot, like, did that shape, like before you actually got there, what were you into? And then how did that shape when you got into brewing? Not that you didn't brew before Kent Falls, but you know what I mean? Like, what did you drink before you became professional?
I mean, everything, honestly. It was like, when I was at the Answer, people would, it was such a hot spot because it's Mekong's brewery, essentially, right next door. So people were always doing bottle shares. We'd have people show up at 7 or 8 in the morning after they'd get off their night shift and show up during a brew day and be like, hey, you want to try this beer? Hey, you want to try this beer? So it was just that whole year that I was there. I drank so much beer. I put on so much weight. I mean, I think I'm 200 pounds right now, and I was 60 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I think I was 190 before I went there. And like, it was just, I gained 70 pounds within 1 year because I was drinking so much beer all the time. Everything that anyone would put in front of me, I was like, oh, I got to try this. I got to try this. Oh, I got to try this. And I think that's where a lot of my palate comes from, is just being able to experience a lot in a very short amount of time. So I wouldn't like pigeonhole myself into anything prior to Kent Falls. I was just drinking to, expose my palate to as much as possible and discover what I wanted out of beer.
Nice. What was that transition like, though, going from Kent Falls to down south and then back up? Is 12% and Marlowe what brought you back up north?
Yeah.
And how did that kind of come about? Was it did you go to 12% and turn Marlowe? For those that don't know, it's basically 12% Beer Project is a bunch of brewers collectively in a brewing area, and Marlowe is its own entity within that. Was that kind of that? What's the word I'm looking for? Because that's a dream scenario. You know what I mean? Getting to kind of brew and do what you want to do and have that kind of leeway in a big facility like that, and then be able to bounce stuff off other people and be able to just get reps. You know what I mean? On what you want to do in and outside of your beer. Was that was too good to pass up, and that's why you came back up this way?
I was dating somebody up here, and so there was a heavy motivation for me to move up. And so Brandon, who was at the Answer, who I was his assistant brewer, he's the head brewer, called me up and said, hey, would you want to move back to New England? And I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm trying to do right now. He's like, would you want to move back to Connecticut? And I was like, that's exactly where I'm trying to go. He's like, I'm opening up this brand, which is Short Throw. And would you want to be the head brewer at this place? They're looking for a head brewer. Like, would you want to put your name into the ring and see what happens? And I was like, yeah, but I would want to do that if I could open up my own brand as well. So he got me in touch, 10 minutes later with Alex Blank, who is one of the owners of 12%. And, we got to talking over the weekend, or the next few weeks, actually, where it was like, this is kind of what I want to do with the brand that I would open. It didn't have a name at that time. It'd be so far off what everybody else is doing that I think it would help the 12% brand as a whole, because it would fill that niche that you don't currently have. So just pitched that to him, and he took that home and thought about it and came back to me and was like, yeah, I think this is a good thing for both of us. So like, let's roll forward with it. And it honestly is a dream scenario. I think it's awesome.
It's okay to enjoy and smile and love all that kind of stuff. Then Marlowe, where's that name come from? You said you didn't have a name when you were going into it. Where'd that come from?
So, I mean, I was at the Voodoo. There's a Voodoo in Meadville, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. It's where my parents live. They have a Good Vibes Festival. Yeah. They have a Good Vibes Festival every year. So that's where I was when this whole discussion happened. So we were talking, it's like, if I could open up a brand, what would I want to call it? And I was running through, 100 different names, and I knew I wanted it to be something close and personal to me. I have this habit of kind of getting 2 years into a project and then just getting bored with it and moving on to the next thing. It's just my ADD personality. And like, I feel like I've mastered to a certain point, and it's like, all right, on to the next thing. What else can I find? And so I wanted to mitigate that aspect of it for myself, kind of inhibit. I know myself, so I wanted to inhibit that for me and make this a long-term thing. So I was like, I know I want it to be personal. I know I want it to be family-oriented, because I'm very close with my family, and just running through a bunch of different ideas. And, like, maybe we name it after a grandparent, and Marlowe happened to be a name that sounded unique enough that it's like, okay, let's kind of like ruminate over this and think about it. And then my little brother was going through, we were all in on it at the time, and so he's kind of going through like old photographs of my grandparents, and he finds a piece of music that my grandfather, which he was a choir director and composed a bunch of music, and so he wrote a piece of music for my parents' wedding. And on it was like his signature, which I ended up using for the brand. So it's like this, it's his signature from a piece of music he composed for my parents' wedding.
So the font design, the Marlowe font, is actually like signature based off of that.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty awesome, man. That's very cool.
Yeah,
that's very cool. And like, so you're moving into that space. You find out where you want to go. 12%'s the deal. You're going to go in there. You're going to do your own branding. And this is right around 2019 is when this is going down.
Yeah.
Like at that stage, you're brewing like assistant brewer. You're pumping out a bunch of beers. What's that like? What's that got to be like from a head brewer standpoint of making? A brewery has an ethos and you're following that, but now you have to take on not just your own brand, but other people's brands. And how do you do that and not influence those other beers the way you think? I understand ingredients and you follow recipes and stuff like that. But when you're talking back and forth with brewers and the 12% side of things, it's got to be hard sometimes not to, like, I don't want to say share your share your juice with somebody else. Like, you're just like, you want to bring your own thing to everything you make, but there's so many different moving parts in the way that's set up. How do you separate yourself, compartmentalize Marlowe away from all the other breweries in that setup?
It's definitely difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm coming from a creative writing background. So a lot of what I did was writing fiction. So that was putting my head into a bunch of different characters' heads. And then trying to like write from their perspective. So it's very similar to that, where, whenever I converse with the brands about what they want to do, it's all, they're driving the conversation fully, and I'm just trying to get inside their head and understand what they want out of this beer. So that's a question I ask a lot, is like, what do you want out of this? What are you going for? Do you want this to be like a really big, thick, chewy beer? Do you want this to be really thin? Like, what exactly do you want people's experience to be when you're having this? And then I can kind of guide them through there, because I'm so used to the system that I can help them achieve what they're seeking. And I try not to impart too much of my own personal influence, because it's a lot of it's subjective. It's like, I wouldn't do that, but if you want to do that, that's fine. I wouldn't say that to them, but there's certain things that I wouldn't do, and that's fine if they want to do it, because the beer is selling and people are drinking it and they're liking it, and that's fine.
And then what percentage, like if someone, people that come in and work out of that beer project, like, are you more of a tour guide, or are you more of a, like, how much of their fingerprints are on the actual production of the beer when it comes to what you're producing inside of 12% for them? You know what I mean? Like, is it pretty much just recipe driven? They're there for brew day just so they can oversee the operation, and you're just kind of turning most of the screws, or is it a little bit more or less in either direction?
Now, it's pretty much that first one. They're there to
Yeah.
oversee. I mean, with COVID, no one was there. Just a
Yeah,
very
of
strict
course.
no outsiders policy. And so, which, I mean, it was very frustrating for them, but for us, it was like to keep
Mhm.
everything in house. And then, yeah, they're just there to like kind of impart and taste through the wort and, make these small micro adjustments as needed, which is cool because like you get to talk a little bit about each beer as it's being made versus me just like showing up at 5 a.m. and then being like, boop, boop, boop. And then all of a sudden there's wort and here we go, throwing some yeast and let's get out of here. So it's a lot more to like actually think about the process when they're there, and it's nice.
And you mentioned COVID. Um, it's got to be an interesting business model or setup that you guys have going, because I'm not saying any business is COVID proof, but you guys are in a pretty envious position where you were as far as making beer for the pandemic, because you were strictly, not that you didn't have a tap room and you didn't produce beer out of there, but it was a lot of it was distribution based stuff that, there's a lot of breweries and a lot of people that are opening up breweries and starting breweries. And, for in the grand scheme of things, 12% is relatively new, that most of their beer went into like a tap room system, and kind of everybody came and picked up beer out of that, where you guys already had a distribution footprint. How much of a hit did you see? Did you guys just keep chugging along, keeping your head down, making beer, or did you see a big flux in the amount of beer you were producing versus previous COVID?
I mean, I don't see a whole lot of that. I just basically make the beer. I know when it first happened and the shutdowns were happening, we lost a significant amount of business just because no one knew what was going to happen. Everything shut
Yeah,
down. It was just like, I don't
yeah,
know if people are going to want to drink beer. And then 2 weeks later, it was like, no, everyone wants to drink a lot of beer. So, let's start ramping it back up. And then it seems pretty normal at this point. So it's almost like a very surreal thing when you wear a mask throughout the brew day, but then you walk outside and you're like, oh yeah, there's a pandemic. Like that's why I'm wearing a mask. I guess I forgot. Like I've been doing this work thing for the past year. It's like living in our own bubble, which is good and safe for us, but it's like really weird for your own sanity.
yeah. Well, I mean, are you existing pretty much in a New England version of Jersey Shore at this point, instead of laundry? What is it? Laundry gym tanning. It's brew gym, and then rotate that every
Yeah,
day.
pretty
And then you
much.
just kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's how it is.
And
I see the same like
how's your,
10 people every day. Health?
yeah, and your
Oh,
brain is still there, or you're just kind of losing your mind a little bit, maybe,
I
or
mean,
was it
I
always
started
that?
losing my
Was
mind
that
way
the case
before
always?
COVID. So,
Fair enough. Uh,
but you got a lot closer with everybody, which is great. But other than
how
that,
many
like,
people are
I
you
mean,
working with there? How many people are you working with down there?
directly, we have, so right now we have 4 brewers. We just picked up another one last week. So we had 2, and then we've got another one over the past year, and then brought on a 4th one last week, and then we have 4 people working in the cellar, and then we have a whole canning line crew, and then an office crew and a warehouse crew, and it's just, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a decent amount of people,
What's the
but we're
what percentage
stuck on it
what
every day.
percentage of your week is Marlowe focused, or is it kind of like
Uh,
every day? Every day is Marlowe just a certain percentage?
I mean, it's like crossed over. I'm running. I mean, this computer that I'm talking on right now is like 12 years old. So I just bought my first computer since college last week, I believe. So I'm really stepping up in the world. But I run the entire thing from my phone, so it's like, basically I'll be brewing beer and then answering emails or answering Instagram while I'm doing that. So it's like really weird, this odd crossover. Trying to build a website right now, and it's like I will get a day over my weekend that I'm like spending a couple hours building content for that, which is like the last thing I want to be doing on my weekend. So not a lot of time. There isn't a lot of time, but it's fine for now.
So let me ask you this. When was the last vacation you were on, and why was it 15 years ago?
Yeah, right. That's what it feels like. I do get to sneak out for like extended weekends once in a while. You know, I'll take 2 days off and just kind of like reset my brain. I have gotten to visit some friends, which has been nice only in the past few months. With at the Seed down in New Jersey, so they've been a huge help in keeping me sane over the COVID. You know, we started off with like having weekly. God, what is that? I don't even remember what it's called. It's not Skype. What is it called now? Zoom meetings.
Zoom meetings.
Yeah,
but no, they're doing quite well down there. I mean, I'm closer to them than I am to you. Me being down here in New Jersey, and I knew they were coming out. I had a collaboration with them before they even began their brewery. Just started building it out. They did a mixed culture collab with the Free Will Brewing and somebody else. I forget what it was, and it was pretty fantastic. And I'd met them before, and in upstate New York at a place called Eddie's Roadhouse. They were eating there one time, and I met both of them there, and it seems like they're New Jersey is welcoming them with open arms. So that's a cool collab. What did you guys make?
Well, we made a pale ale a little bit ago, and then we're planning another one soon up here. It's going to be an English mild, which should be cool. You know, it's basically just trying to get as far away from these double IPA, milkshake, soda beer hybrid beers as possible, and actually make some beer flavored beer.
Yeah, well, let's speak to that. I mean, and spin it back towards like strictly Marlowe stuff. I mean, you know, I've run the gamut from lagers to milds to the bulk of the stuff I've had from you off the shelf has been, you know, low ABV, hop forward stuff. I won't even call it hazies because I think I had a West Coast influenced beer by you not too long ago. And it seems like you focus in that wheelhouse. And we talked about that, but it's like, you said that's kind of brought to you by working at Ken Falls, looking about the low ABV stuff and enjoying it and being something that you really want to drink yourself. So you produce it. A lot of people kind of, I don't know, say that it's too hard. Not technically, which it is, but I mean to sell, to get into people's hands. But every time I see somebody talk about your brewery, whether it be on social media in real life, they really enjoy those kind of things. Where do you think that comes from? Like the mindset that like the English mild isn't going to sell, but if certain people make an English mild, it sells. Is it you're selling the sizzle, or is it you're just making good beer? It comes down to just making good beer and doing what needs to be done to create it. Because some people just won't even go there.
I think I definitely think this is going to sound egotistical, but I think it's just making better beer. Honestly, and doing a ton of research and obsessing over it and talking to the right people for years. Honestly, like the first lagers I made were okay, and I wasn't making them at Marlowe, but I spent years and years and years and years talking to the right people about the right things and not stealing things, but just discussing more conceptually, like what this should be and how to approach this. That being lager making, that it just kind of resonated with me. And so when it was time to do it my own, I had a good foundation of like what I was trying to represent versus like trying to recreate. So I think that's what people are missing is they just get so hyped up with these beers that sell very quickly, and they make so much of it that they forget that you can make other beer and make it well and learn how to make it well. So that when they try to make those beers because they want to drink them, they're just like, oh, I don't even know how to do this, but it should be easy enough. So I'm just going to throw this together. Blah, blah, blah. It comes out and it's like, nah, you know, it's a lot more nuance into this than people are giving it to. So
wait, beer flavored beer is hard to make? What are you talking about?
Super hard to make.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Do you guys have, is the lagering setup that you have up there? Like, is it like just like some cold fermenters, or do you have like horizontal tanks or anything like that, or is it just like you have temperature control up there and you do like lagering inside? Because I don't see a ton of lager stuff come out at 12%, but I know you do some.
Right. It's all vertical, conical fermenters, and then I just throw it into one of those and then let it sit in there for a while. To quote Dan Suarez, when I asked him why he didn't have any horizontals, he once said to me, "It's because I'm an American brewer and I brew lagers into vertical tanks." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, there you go."
Okay. Yeah, but so many American brewers go hectoliter, so that I'm confused. I don't know. If you were going to set up,
Sure.
so it'd be really, you're in a great setup. You have an awesome facility at your fingertips. You could do pretty much whatever you do. But if and when the day would come to where you open your own place, which I'm sure that's your aspiration to do so at some point, what do you think the brand and what you make right now and the beers that you make right now would shift in a different direction? Would you do more mixed culture stuff? Would you do like big burly, like pastry stouts, or even just like barley wine, old age barley wine, or what you're doing right now is what you want to do and you just expand on that, or a bit of both?
Probably just expand on this. I'd want to have a food program as well, a minimal food program to pair with the beers. So it wasn't just all beer driven, make food that is as good as the beer is. So, just have a place for people that they could come and enjoy and spend an afternoon with their friends or family, eating incredible food and drinking incredible beer. I mean, that'd be the dream. If I can pull that off, that'd be awesome. We'll see. And then I think a lot more mixed culture. That's really where my passion lies, is doing mixed firm beers and tying local ingredients more into the beer and creating just a deeper story behind each beer that's being made, rather than just throwing new hops into something or trying to tell a story that doesn't exactly connect with the beer, whereas you can tell a much deeper story with each of the mixed firm beers.
Now, you spoke about the food earlier. You're like, not that you're a chef or you're a big like food person as far as creation of food, but you enjoy the pairing of food and beer. Does that come from any place other than drinking beer and eating food and loving the shit out of it, or was that instilled by somebody specifically, or a certain experience or something like that?
I've always been a person who wanted to help my mom in the kitchen growing up. It was a huge passion of mine. Just every time we get a chance, would just like help her out. Come from a large family, so I have a bunch of brothers, and no one else really had this like passion for cooking. So I was always like the guy that my mom leaned on. And then when I started working at Voodoo, I actually started in the kitchen. It was like they had an open position there, and I just kind of like was like, yeah, I'll just do whatever, like literally whatever you want. They're like, well, our chef needs a sous chef, so you can do that. I was like, okay, cool. And I learned a ton from him. He was it was a very small kitchen, but the food was phenomenal, and it was just so much. I have been able to be there, but I actually ran their kitchen for a very brief period of time, and that's when I realized that I did not want to be a chef with my life, but wanted to be a brewer.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a lateral move to a certain extent. I mean, chef is. I'm not saying brewing is not hard, but being a chef is insanity. Like you have to have some kind of sadomasochistic kind of thing about you to be a chef, anyway, I grew up in my family-owned restaurants when I was younger, and I just never wanted to live in that world. But so I can see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, it's hard. But, it sucks.
Yeah, and so that's cool. I mean, I had a friend of mine that actually lived from Millvale, so I know the area. I don't know the area well, but I've been out there quite a bit. And Voodoo is kind of an establishment out there. Like, when you worked there, how much brewing experience did you get, like, from working at Voodoo? Like, what did you do there? Is that what piqued your interest? Obviously, it had to be piquing your interest to get you into beer. Like, how long were you there for?
I was there for 2.5 years, I think. I did no brewing whatsoever. I was kind of walking into it completely as a noob. I walked in the door on the opening
which
weekend.
has its advantages. It has to, because
unlearning
bad habits is way harder than teaching new good habits. Yeah.
So I walked in and it was just like, I want to work here. And they were like, yeah, everyone wants to work here. And I was like, yeah, but I'll work for free. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah. So I started working on the bottling line, which I did every week when I worked there. I would wash kegs. I would fill kegs. I got to like watch one beer be made all the way through the process, which is cool. Kind of learned how to like wash tanks, but it was mostly like just washing tanks on the outside so that the place looked pretty. But the majority of my life was just washing kegs and filling kegs and doing like assistant manager stuff and helping out in the kitchen and bartending, just general maintenance around the pub.
Nice. And then have you gone out there and worked with those guys since?
Yeah. I tried to like join the military at one point in the past 10 years. So I moved back home to enlist, and they were building out their new facility. And so I got to help, just part-time whenever they needed somebody to like have an extra set of hands, like running the glycol lines or doing insulation and basically whatever needed to get done, help them get that production facility up and running. That's what I was doing. But yeah, still tight with them. I like those guys a lot.
That's awesome, man. Let's talk about Eager to Share for a little bit. Like, has that always been like your kind of a beer that you thought up from a while ago, or had an idea about what you're going to make and then purposely made that like what I would call your flagship beer, for lack of a better term? Like, has that always been the plan with that beer, or is that something you just kind of ended up being that beer for you?
I think it just ended up being that way. I've been kind of tinkering with this recipe for the past few years. I made a very similar, I wouldn't say it's similar, but a variation of it when I was first at Kent Falls. It was a single hop pale ale, and it came out awesome. And I was like, oh, like this works. So maybe I could expand a little bit on this. And then when I was down at Aslan, that was the first beer I made at Aslan. It was my first time ever using Riwaka hops, which was cool. And then when it came up, I was like, I've been working on this recipe for a while. I feel comfortable with it. And that's what it was when I first started making Marlowe beer up here. It was just comfort level on the system and with the water that I just like, I'm comfortable with this beer. Let's make it. And then the first batch turned out great. And it was like, well, here we go. And it kind of just took off from there.
And like, what's the word? God damn, I lost my train of thought there for a second. I apologize. But when you like the logistics of baking a beer like that, like is something that you probably produce that what, every month or two? I'm assuming.
Try to make it once a month.
Once a month, okay. Like the logistics about making that beer is consistent. Do you try to nail it exactly the same every time, or are you rotationally hopping that, knowing that it's going to morph over time? Because are like you trying to basically duplicate it a facsimile every time you produce that beer, or are you understanding that it's going to subtly change from time to time?
There are aspects of it that I tweak, trying to seek out different flavors in different ways. I think the grain, no, that's changed a little bit, but I'm just always subtle tweaks, just a little bit here, a little bit there, trying to chase after the next thing that I'm excited about in the beer, where it's similar enough that it's going to taste like Eager to Share, but there's an aspect of it where it's like, oh, like wow, these hops are way more pronounced, or wow, like the mouthfeel is like way fuller than the last batch that I had. And so I'm just trying to like tweak things in a way that I'm noticing that that it's changing. But if if it's their first exposure to Eager to Share, they're going to have a very similar, if not the same, experience that most people have whenever they drink the beer.
And that was kind of the question I had, which was like, how do you balance that? Like, okay, ingredients are going to change, but I also want to change what myself. So I want to tweak and I want to keep it within a certain framework so that it's relatively in the same ballpark as far as beer, but this aspect might change over here. But I'm also trying to evolve and change with a little bit over times over there. It's got to be a little bit maddening at times because, you know what I mean? Trying to aim for a target that's static is difficult at best when you have multiple moving parts. It's got to be equally, what's the word I'm looking for? Exciting, because it's a challenging thing at time to time, but at the same time be frustrating when you don't nail that mark. Like, has there been certain batches that you eager to share? You're like, man, no, it's got to be.
Yeah, it happens all the time. But people, you know, I'll get comments and they'll be like, "Oh, this eager to share is awesome. I love it." You know, I'll get messages and I'm like, "What batch is that?" And they're like, "Oh, it's this batch." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I wish you could have found the one before that," or something like that. Like, you know, I'm glad that they're enjoying it, but for me, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm just like super sensitive to it at this point. But I don't know. It's like some batches are better than others. It's true, but there's always that underlying mark of Citra Mosaic, and there was 2 batches that were just terrible. I'm still upset about it.
Do you what I mean, you could say no to these questions if you want to. What was your what was the one beer you're like, this is cash money? People are gonna love the shit out of this beer, and then people are like, I hate this guy, I hate it, I can't stand it. Conversely, what was the beer you're like, yeah, I hate this one, and people are like, this is the best one ever? You have those in your pocket, or you just kind of like the typical artist who just kind of everything sucks and you forget about it and push it off to the side?
I don't think I've ever had that happen with any of my beers, because they're all just within the similar vein of just being a low ABV. So I'm just assuming everyone's going to be like, I don't want to drink this. And then, you know, I get a ton of Instagram comments and messages from people being like, hey, this beer is awesome. I bought a case of it and I'm drinking it all the time. Like, when are you going to make it again? And I'm like, that was like my ultimate hope, is that people were just like wanting to drink this beer and experience it with like friends or family, and just experiencing experiences and drinking a beer that they'll remember the next morning. And so people are doing that with my beer, and that's awesome. So that's all I can ask for.
That's the key. Remembering next morning. You're doing these triple IPAs. No one's going to be remembered. They'd be like, I remember I passed out. You know what I mean? Where you drink a couple eager shares, you're like, hey, I can function like a semi-mobile human being right now. How much? I mean, well, it's a stupid question, but how much do you pay attention to the Instagram Untapped culture? You have to. You know what I mean? There's no way you wouldn't. You have to. But at what extent do you push it away?
Instagram, I'm pretty active on. I mean, that's like the only social media I have for the business. I need to create a Facebook at some point, but Facebook is the devil, so I'm just putting it off. Even though Instagram and Facebook are the same thing at this point. But I like taking pictures too, so I just like the photo-driven content of Instagram versus writing, which is funny considering I'm an English major, but. I just don't have time. I don't have time to think and write things out as fluently as I used to. So I pay very close attention to Instagram. It's all, I mean, I'd say 99% positive, which is amazing. And I'm grateful for that. And hopefully it continues. Like, please let it continue. But Untapped is another beast all in and of itself, that I was really closely monitoring and paying attention to, and then I've basically stopped at this point. I just cannot care anymore about people's opinions because they're very misguided, honestly. You know, people will be like, this beer is perfect, 4.2 out of 5. And I'm like, that's the opposite of the definition of perfect. Like, that's not even, like, you're not even defining the words. You don't know what you're saying. It's things like that are just weird.
It's got to be so frustrating because it's, you know, it's personal. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much you try not to make it personal, it's fucking personal. It's your fucking beer. Mm-hmm. But there is such good data in there. If you weed through all of the bullshit, you can find some goodness in there. But man, that bullshit is just soul sucking horrificness.
Yeah, and it's, you know, that whole. I'm not even going to pretend like I know the adage, but there is something about you could have 10 very positive comments, and then there's one negative comment, and all you're going to remember is that negative comment. It's just it eats away at you. And so I'm trying not to let any negativity into my life unless if it's like self-driven, which I'm very negative about things. I'm very opinionated about things. So that's enough negativity I need in my life. I don't need somebody who doesn't drink lagers ever, who decided to get a beer because they like the name and then be like, this is pretty good for a lager, but I don't like lagers, so I'm going to rate it 1 star and not realize how this affects that person's business. Boop, send. And it's just like, come on. Come on.
The only one better than that is the person that says, my favorite beer, can't wait to have another, and accidentally rates it like 0 stars. It's like, motherfucker. Like, why? Like, as I deal with a business that has to deal with that stuff all day. Yeah. So let's flip to that. Let's talk about drinking beers that aren't your own. Like when you come home, I mean, you said you're losing weight, you're hitting the gym, so you're probably not chugging a ton of beer at home. But when you do crack a beer and it's not your own, who are you drinking right
now? That's a good question. I like Hill Farmstead and Suarez when I can get it, which has been infrequent with COVID. So that's misfortune because it's within driving distance. It's pretty easy to get to from here. There's another brewery. There's a few breweries here. Fox Farm and Counterweight both make great beer. Their lager programs are great.
Fox Farm is ridiculous. Like, I just don't even know. Like, I get angry when I drink their beers. They're so good.
Yeah, it's great. Great beer. So if I'm going out at a bar, well, when we were allowed to go out to bars, if Fox Farm was on, that's pretty much what I would get. Or New England Brewing Company, Nedco, like they make great beer as well. So it's like, you want a classic beer that's going to come out that's not super hazy, which is very appreciative. I'm very appreciative of these days. I usually drink their beer. So, I mean, I'm trying to keep it as local as possible, or just like the best lagers in the world. The usual stuff.
We have one of Nebca's old brewers brewing kind of close to me at District 96.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I got married a couple of years ago. I put their Kolsch on. That was clear beer, man. Clear beer.
Clear beer. I think it's the future, but but that future is pretty far off.
What do you guys got cooking at Marlowe? Are you going to start dipping your toes in a different kind of styles? Like, while you're at 12%, like, is there anything you're making now or anything you're not making now that you wish you could, whether it be something Belgian influence or whether that you can actually produce in a facility there?
I just really want to get into mixed farm again. And it's not possible in the facility right now, but trying to make moves so that it will be possible. And I've got a pretty good culture that finishes out in like 3 months, and it gets pretty much all the character out of the wood and out of the yeast that I want. And it's stable, which is, it's unheard of. So
we're
I could get that going again.
3.5% table beers. Is that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, that'd be the ideal. Or like 4.5%,
Fine. I'll take the high
4.5%. Yeah, right.
No, because that's honestly, that's exactly what I want to drink all day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want Imperial Stout and 750s. Give me a 750 of a 4% mixed culture beer, and I'll drink that all day long. That's exactly what I want. So
and you can drink it yourself too. Like, it's 2 16-ounce beers. I guess it's less. No, what is it? A little bit more than that. And so you can drink that by yourself. Like, you don't need anyone there to share it, but you can share it if you want, which is the great thing about the larger format beers and the low alcohol content. These giant stouts that come in, they're 15% and they come in a 750. It's like, who are you sharing this with? I don't have that many friends. Like, I would be just so drunk.
That's a Class A drug, man. You shouldn't be doing that. Like, we just buy grain alcohol.
Exactly.
No, it's funny because it's and it's probably the same hill you die on. It's like
Yeah,
those
pretty much.
high ABV hazies. You know what I mean? Like my thing. The reason why I like Eager to Share and some of your lower ABV stuff is I get the 6% a pale ale from you, and it kind of drinks like a 7.5%. Like it's impactful. It's delicious, but it finishes dry. It's not under attenuated and not super sweet. And that's what I enjoy. And people look at me cross-eyed, and they're like, "Oh no, I like my beers to be 9% and drink like it's 5." I'm like, why? Like, why you want something that's super light and
Yeah, it
not
doesn't make
really
any
all
sense to me.
perceivable? Yeah, it's just like what you just want alcohol. Why don't you just go drink vodka? Like, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to hit at that point. But man, it seems to be turning a corner though. Have you seen an increase in love and buying of your relatively low ABV beers? Have you seen people digging on them more the more we go? Or is it pretty much static?
Sorry, repeat that question.
No. So have you seen an increase in people digging on your beers to lower ABV stuff? Like it seems like we're starting to trend towards a little bit lower ABV kind of fan base as far as not just pale ales, but lagers and all this stuff. It's eking. There's a big swath of people that love big, huge, burly, hazy IPAs, but it seems like we're starting to have a little bit of conversion.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing a lot higher sales for sure, without a question, because that's what people are. They love to try things. They love to try these like new beers that are filled with lactose or finish super high or have like insane amount of hops in it, and they love to try that. But when it comes down to like the daily drinking beer, the lawnmower beer, they want something that they can drink all day. And so the lower BV, I think, sell probably a little bit better than the higher stuff. Not in such like fervorous amounts right when it's first released, but I think over time, over like the year, I see, it's selling consistently, which is good for business. It's what you want. You want consistency. You don't want just like these hypes of peaks and valleys. And I think low ABV allows for that.
And I have to ask this because a friend of the pod, someone that like comments frequently and follows the podcast, needs to know, when are we going to see Eager to Share in 12 packs and 12-ounce cans? Is that ever going to happen? Is that ever going to happen?
I would love for that to happen. I think that'd be awesome. I think that would be a very, very cool thing.
Because do you run anything but 16-ounce cans out of 12%? It's all 16-ounce cans, right?
I did a double IPA for my anniversary in a 12-ounce can. So it was a double IPA in a 12-ounce can. So we have the ability to do that. We don't have the packaging for it.
I gotcha. I had that IPA, actually. I just forgot I had that. Someone sent that to me.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've brewed something that big. So it was like, it was okay. Wasn't my best showing this year. This year, I've learned some things.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are we going to do? We're going to do octuple IPA, octuple centuple hopped with cranberry sauce or something like that. What's going on?
Can guarantee that'll never happen. Just 8% beer, with my favorite malts and favorite hops. So it changes every year. So I didn't pigeonhole myself into anything. So it'll be constantly changing, depending on what I've discovered over that past year.
Favorite malt and favorite hop you work with? Besides Citra and Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, I love Nelson when it's good. When you get good Nelson, I think that can be explored in a proper way, in a way that is so unique to hops that the only thing close to it is Rawaka, and I think that's why people love Rawaka, but it's impossible to find. So we have cross my fingers, but hopefully a lot of Nelson coming in that we selected the other day that smelled incredible. I mean, it smelled like Rawaka, and it smelled like that classic Nelson. It can't smell like Rawaka and smell like Nelson, but it smells like Nelson in the most classical sense, and I'm very excited to use it. So, and
How
then
often do
favorite
you get
malt.
something that? Yeah.
Sorry, what's that?
No, go ahead. I interrupted. Go ahead.
I don't even know what my favorite malt would be, to be honest. Like, there's
There you
so
go.
many.
No, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
no, I was gonna ask. How often have you smelt a batch or like picked up hops that smelled a certain way and you got them and you brewed it and it was bunk? You're just like, man, these
It's
suck. They
happened.
just smell good. Multiple
Yep,
times,
it's
yeah.
happened multiple times. Yeah, you like smell something, you're like, oh my god, this is it, and then it comes out, and you're like, this sucks. I did not like this at all.
Mm,
So happens a lot. So we'll see. Hopefully, hopefully these Nelson hops come out to be the way that I want them to be.
awesome, man. Anything else special coming out of the shoot? You gonna do any kind of bottled stuff or just kind of keeping your head down, making drinkable beers and just chugging along?
Yeah, I mean, still waiting. I have some stout aging in Pappy 23 barrels. I'm just waiting, and I'll be waiting for a long time, I'm sure, at this point. Uh, so we'll see when that gets released, but I'm sure people are going to be excited about that. I'm excited about that.
How long have they been in there so far?
Been it went in December 31st, so New Year's Eve was the day that it went in.
Okay, so you're talking about, oh, you've got a little bit to go. You gonna most likely gonna blend those out, or are you just gonna like see how it comes out and what tastes right, throw it in a bottle or can and go from there?
Yep. So I have EH Taylor, two barrels of EH Taylor, 2 barrels of Pappy 23. I'm just going to blend those two together. So the two Pappies will go together, the EH Taylors will go together, and then two separate varieties of this stout. So hopefully it goes well. I don't know. You never know with barrels. They tell you.
Yeah, yeah, nothing like spending 45 minutes talking about the qualities of how much we should live that low ABV life, and then end it with talking about how these Pappy and huge barrel aged beers are going to go down and all that kind of stuff. But
Well, life is all about balance, right? So you got to
yes,
have your
yes,
dessert once in a while.
hell yeah, and honestly, I mean, at this point, I know you're the same. I like to drink like 5% beers, and then at the end, I'm gonna crack something that's like 12, 13%. Just for fun.
Yeah,
At the end. For a little nightcap, have something that's hair on fire and
exactly.
delicious and call it a day. Awesome, dude. I appreciate you coming on, man. This is very cool of you. And like I said, I've been a big fan of the beers you've been tossing out there for quite some time. So it's cool to actually put a voice and a face to the beer that's actually being made.
It's always fun getting to do stuff like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell people where they can find you. I'm sure they know how, but let everybody know where they can find you and how to track down some Marlowe.
Marlowe Ales on Instagram and website soon. marloweales.com. It's coming up. It's basically done. And then from there, you'll be able to learn where to find Marlowe because I don't know where it goes. 12% knows. And I'm just like,
Can you
I
order
want to know more.
direct? Can you order direct from 12%? Like, could someone go online and potentially order to their house?
If they live in
I don't know.
Connecticut, we do home deliveries. We don't ship outside of state right now, but you can order it and then hold on to it. We'll hold on to it for like a week or two or whatever. If you're ever making a trip up to Connecticut.
And I know, like, I live in New Jersey. I work in Pennsylvania, so I can find your stuff in Pennsylvania. You can find your stuff in New Jersey. I'm pretty sure if you draw a path between us and 12% up there, you probably in every state in between. So I appreciate you. Come on, man. Very
Yep.
cool of you. Appreciate it. So
Yeah, not a problem.